To start off with, Ruth, for those that aren't aware, you are the CEO of LeadDev, which I understand was formerly White October Events. Can you just bring that to life, please? So if people aren't aware of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I co-founded White October Events with my business partner, Dave, 10 years ago. And then 2 years into that journey, we founded a kind of particular conference community brand called LeadDev, and that's what we go as now. So we're LeadDev now. But essentially, we serve a global community of senior software engineering leaders. So they are the people who lead teams of software engineers, either in technology businesses or in businesses that are powered by technology. So they're a group of people with really hard jobs and a very particular set of skills. They're technical people, so they have a set of technical skills that they have to keep current. They're also leading really highly performing teams under a lot of pressure, and so they need a lot of management skills, things that in the past people would have called soft skills, all those skills that make a team hum. And then also increasingly, as they get more senior, they also need a whole set of business skills, and they need to be able to talk to people higher up the business who might not be technical. So it's a very complex job, and we serve that group of people very happily around the world.
Fantastic. And we're going to get more into how you do that and talk a bit more about community in a bit. But to start off with, I'm always interested to know, when I speak to good people like yourselves that have co-founded a business, can you tell us a bit more, an introduction as to the journey into launching the business? Because as I understand it, sort of directly prior, you were an events manager for the Association of MBAs, if that's right. So I'm sort of interested to know, with it, even back when you were at school, people tell me that they were buying and selling things, or they wanted to get into a bit. Was that always sort of in your makeup? Did you think you always wanted to launch a business?
100% not. Never, ever. Never crossed my mind. Nobody in my family is an entrepreneur. Hadn't really met anyone who ran their own business. My parents both had public sector jobs all my life as I grew up. Those were, the parents of my friends had those sorts of jobs, kind of public service jobs, actually.
Yeah.
I knew teachers and civil servants and university lecturers. I didn't know entrepreneurs. It never occurred to me I would ever start my own business, nor did I feel particularly equipped with the skills that you might need if I'd thought about it to start my own business.
Yeah.
And so I'd always assumed I would have a job and work for other people. And that's what I did for the first, 15 years of my career. I did a bit of marketing and a bit of PR, got into event management, really loved it. Worked in a few different industries and sectors, running conferences, eventually running international conferences. Really, really loved actually the customer service side of putting on conferences for people and delivering an amazing experience. And that's what I love. That's my background. And then Dave, who's my co-founder, Dave Fletcher, who I'm lucky enough to run a business with, he is an entrepreneur, and he's like your classic entrepreneur. He's the sort of person who always has a new bright idea and an idea of how you'd get that going. And wherever you put him in his life and in the world, he will find a new business to start. And he was running a software development agency in Oxford 10 years ago, and I was working for other people in event management roles. And his small team in Oxford had started running grassroots community conferences because they wanted to go to them. They thought it would be good to market their agency. And so they were spinning up these small conferences. They were selling a little bit of sponsorship to cover the cost of printing fun backdrops and covering the lunch. And they were selling tickets, having a load of fun doing it, and actually selling out small venues in Oxford. So they kind of uncovered a need, but actually Dave needed his developers to get back to building software and building websites and apps for other people. And at the same time, I was kind of thinking, ready for a new job. I'm not quite sure what next. And Dave doesn't quite remember this part of the story, but it was in the pub. One night in the pub, we said, well, maybe we should just start a business together. And I said, I definitely don't know how to start or run a business. And he said, oh, no, it's really easy. I can show you how to do that. As long as you know how to professionalize these events, because we don't know how to do that. I was like, oh, well, I definitely know how to do that. So it was quite organic, and it's not in my blood. It's not in my DNA, and I don't have an MBA. So if I can do it, anybody can.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you. That's a good piece of advice. And also, all good stories, all good beginnings, should I say, to a story tend to start in a pub somewhere. So, would you say then that if you didn't know Dave or hadn't had that discussion with Dave, that you wouldn't have gone off and done something by yourself? Do you think that was sort of pivotal?
Yes, it definitely was. And
Yeah,
I feel like there were kind of a few lucky things that got me to this really wonderful place, because I just absolutely love my job, feel very privileged to be doing it, like incredibly
yeah,
privileged to be doing it. And I really love the industry that I'm in now, which is tech. And that's not my background either. And nor would I have got into tech, but actually I found myself in this just fascinating, fast moving, kind of collaborative industry. Obviously, it's a very, 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 very broad church. So there are lots of different things going on in tech.
sure.
But the bit of tech, the bubble of tech that I exist in, is really lovely people that care about human beings, really care about doing a good job, care about getting rid of the kind of toxic elements that you see in some areas of the kind of broader tech industry. What I was ready for, and I hadn't quite put my finger on how I was going to do it, but what I was ready for was a slightly bigger management and leadership challenge, because I was working for other
Right.
people, feeling frustrated sometimes in the way that they were kind of managing teams and businesses and communicating and treating people and sharing information or not sharing information, and sort of starting to have a sense that I felt like maybe I could do a better job and I wouldn't mind having a crack at it. So I don't know where it would have taken me if me and Dave hadn't started a business together. Maybe I
Yeah.
wouldn't be an entrepreneur, but I think I was ready for leadership and ready for some ownership.
Yeah. How did you find the initial transition from employee to business owner?
Fun, stressful, and I think the same things that are
Yeah.
fun are also stressful. So, I mean, we started very, very small. We bootstrapped ourselves on £6,000. Dave was still working full time in his business. So we saw each other once a month for a kind of, a baby board meeting in those days. But I brought on board a woman from my previous company. And so there were two of us sitting in a co-working space on a laptop we just bought each. And so tiny, tiny beginnings. I wasn't running a large team or a large business at that point. But the places where you have autonomy, having worked for other people, are the places where you start having fun. But then also that's stressful too, because are you making the right decisions? And
Mm.
if you haven't done something before, you don't necessarily know if you're doing it right. So it brings fun and, a measure of anxiety as well.
And I guess having that business partner and someone that you've known obviously helps. I'm just interested to know sort of the journey of having a business partner. And I guess it's evolved over the years, right? Because when you go into business with somebody, I guess you've got an inkling as to, what their skill set is, what your skill set is, but actually that possibly changes overnight because the business dictates what you need to do, not always what you want to do. So how's that journey been? Has it been, does it just evolved organically? Have you had to work at it? Just tell us about that.
We said at the beginning, because Dave and I were really good friends and we'd already known each other for years. And Dave is married to Corinna, who I went to primary school with, who is one of my dearest, oldest friends. And we lived around the corner from each other. And we said, we will do this, but we talked about it a lot because we said sometimes businesses go wrong and sometimes friendships in businesses go wrong. And we said, that can't happen to us. There's too much riding on it. And we said, it's not fair on Corinna and me for anything to ever damage our relationship. So we said friends first over absolutely everything else. That's been our kind of credo. And so I think we've stuck to that. And then what's been nice over the years is I feel for me that my friendship with Dave has kind of deepened and richened because we've been through a lot together over 10 years running a business. And so I know him really well now. And I think that at the beginning I knew that we had complementary skill sets, but I really know that now. Our brains work quite differently in a good way, because the things that Dave thinks about, I wouldn't necessarily think about. And the ways that I might approach something wouldn't necessarily be the first thing on Dave's priority list. And somehow between the two of us, because we are friends and we can push back on each other a bit sometimes, we get to a good place. We kind of balance each other out. So for me, it's been really lovely. And I think I was listening to your interview with Terry O'Dwyer, who was saying that he's really loved having a business partner, and that really resonated with me. I was thinking, yes, there's so many times I wouldn't have wanted to make the decisions I was having to make alone, and there's so many times where it's just been so much more fun having somebody to do it with. And how we've worked together has evolved over the years, because for the first, I think 5 years, Dave was running a separate business. So we were running, I was running big decisions past him, and we were having a board meeting together every month, but we weren't working together day to day. And then over the course of the pandemic, we decided that we needed Dave to come on board full time. He shut down his agency. He came to work at LeadDev full time. We worked together every single day, and we had a really big, at sometimes scary job to do over the pandemic, pivoting the business and launching a new stream of the business. And so now we work together in a different way. We're kind of daily co-founders and partners in a way that we weren't before.
I want to sort of turn to the community that you serve. And really, I'm interested in the journey of building a relationship with the community, right? Because I guess from day one, so you had an inkling of an idea. Obviously, Dave specifically was sort of involved in that community in some way, shape, or form. If someone's watching this and, they go, I'm working within a community, I've got an idea for a product, service, event, whatever it is. Talk to me about those building blocks. Where do you think they should start? And then I guess secondly, how's that evolved over the years?
Yeah, I think that the thing I didn't know at the beginning, but I now know what you call it, is that kind of product market fit. So the real magic happened quite early on into our journey. We'd run a few different conferences with a few different ideas, and some of them were successful and some of them were less successful. And then the idea for LeadDev, serving this very specific need for this specific community, came about because, as I say, Dave was running his own agency and he had this exact need himself in his business. So he was promoting people to a kind of first rung of management of technology teams and looking around and going, oh, there's no training for these people. Actually, there's hardly even anything written about this, but it's a hard transition to make from an individual contributor, which is kind of an individual engineer who's coding every day and has a very particular set of hard skills, and making a transition into somebody who's running a team and managing individuals and managing their growth and their pathway. Very, very different set of skills. And back in 2015, when we first launched LeadDev, there wasn't a lot out there which even kind of acknowledged that being a software engineering management was a particular job. So I think that we knew there was a need because Dave was feeling the need himself. We were kind of in the community, and then we did a load of market research, which was going around talking to people saying, if we built this conference with this agenda, would you pay to send people on it? And people said, yeah, actually we would. We're having all of those problems. And so we launched the first conference, which was quite small. We did it in London. I think we had 350 tickets we could sell, and we sold them all. And there was just this magical feeling at the first conference of all these people coming together going, oh my God, you feel this too, and you have this need as well, and you have this problem, and we can solve it together, and I'm not the only person. And so the community kind of sprang up there and then has grown, because we've since launched conferences in other countries, and now we have a content platform, so a lot of our content is free and is online, and we've got a Slack community. But it definitely came from this kind of grassroots sense of understanding what the need was and deciding to meet it. And so I don't think that all founders can do that, because sometimes people want to, they decide they want to start a business, so they're looking around for the need. They're not necessarily experiencing it themselves. But I think that that acute need has to be there. Otherwise, your community, you don't have a community, probably because they don't have enough of a shared need or understanding of why they're there. And probably your conference won't sell either. And we've absolutely made that mistake in the past of mistaking interest for need, and thinking, oh, well, lots of people have said this will be interesting. And you launch a conference and it's like, oh yeah, but we won't spend our one conference budget a year to come to that. It is interesting, but it's not the thing that's keeping us awake at night. So I think that's definitely been one of my key learnings on this journey, is the difference between a lot of people going, oh yeah, that sounds cool, and people going, you must run this, otherwise I won't be able to do my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And then I've got a question actually from Piers Byrne, who is the founder of Collingwood Advisory, who I know that you know. And this episode's in collaboration with Collingwood. Piers asked, why does the community trust you so much? And is it something you do or something you are?
That's interesting. I think, why does the community trust us? We have a point of view, and it's quite a kind of human-centric point of view. So although we have a content platform now, I wouldn't say we're journalists. It's not our background. We haven't kind of grown up reporting on the industry. We have a view, which is that humans are the most important factor in teams, that you have to treat them in a certain way, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is really, really important in running good businesses. It's the right thing to do. It's the important thing to do. It's also the sensible thing to do as a business. So I think we have a certain point of view. We attract people with a similar point of view, and we probably seem authentic. So I suppose that goes away to building trust. Although we have commercialized the business a lot over the last 3 years, and we've become much more kind of commercial in the ways we think about sponsorship, and we've grown up a lot. But I think we have never sold out our community. So we're very careful about how we think about their data, and we're very careful about the things we ask of them and do with them. And we know certain things wouldn't go down well in our industry because we know them quite well. So I don't know. Yes.
Sure.
A combination of it.
So it's about keeping that connection, as you said at the beginning, I guess, isn't it? Constantly speaking to them. Because I also had a question around, how do your events remain relevant to an industry which, tech is constantly evolving, right? I don't profess to but it just is the tech we're using every day, and you're at the, these people that come to your events and are part of your community are at the forefront. I mean, they're developing, I guess, the new tech as well. So it could be easy, if you like, sort of to slip behind, and then someone else comes in and sort of does a land grab. But it doesn't matter how, I guess, loyal your community are. If you're not offering what they want, that can slowly slip away. So how do you stay relevant and valuable to the community?
It's because our content comes from our community. So we have programming committees and advisory boards. These have developed a lot recently and grown a lot, but it comes from a basis that we've always programmed our conferences with members of our community. And we take proposals from our community as well as kind of reaching out to them to ask for things. But basically, we're asking our community what we should program, and they're telling us. And then for our published content, the same. We have probably the majority still of our authors are people who are within our community. They've got full-time jobs, but they're writing for us as well. And they're giving us case studies and telling us their perspective. So we stay relevant to our community because our content is coming from our community. But also, in addition to that, I think the other thing that I've learned over the years, and would be something that I wish I'd learned much quicker, is just how important it is to be constantly speaking to your market and your community, and not just speaking to them, but asking them the right questions. And I think this is somewhere that I have to remind myself to do this all of the time, because it's really easy to get sucked into thinking about something else. If you're running a small business, it's always chucking up things that you need to solve as a founder. So if you then spend 3 months looking internally at something, you've taken your eye off the ball and something's changed. So I wouldn't profess to be perfect on this, but definitely things run smoother and we feel like we have a much better sense of what's going on in our industry and for our community when we're always on the phone to people. So yeah, a reminder to myself as much as advice to anybody else.
I just want to turn, Ruth, to the decision to internationalize the business, because as I understand it, you've got editions of LeadDev both on the east and west coast of the
And
US.
Berlin.
Talk to me about that journey. One might sensibly assume that obviously the reason you've done it is to expand. There's commercial opportunities, but how have you found that? I guess it's not the case of just simply picking up the event and putting it into another location, or is it? Talk to me about that journey.
I need to be careful not to look back with the eyes of somebody who knows a bit more now, because actually we made some fairly naive decisions at the point that we decided to internationalize.
Right.
And we knew that the same issues and challenges existed in the US, and it was a very big market. And we thought it would be really cool and fun to take our conference to New York. I mean, we actually, we partly did it because we thought it would be cool and fun, and it really was. And we didn't have a very big list, and we didn't know enough to know that what we should be doing was building a list. What we did already know was that a lot of the sponsors that we were working with were US based, so that was helpful. But what we didn't have was a big list of audience in the US, because at that time, and still, but particularly at that time, our revenue model was that we were primarily driven by delegate revenue. So it was quite a naive move to go international at that point, but it was the right move, and it is a huge market. And you asked whether you can kind of pick your conference up and drop it down. And I don't think you can, because different markets are different. And so our Berlin conference needs to be really quite different to our San Francisco conference. But then what is so fantastic about the tech industry, one of the things I really love about it, and maybe everyone says this about their industries, but tech is really an industry about sharing knowledge. And so people from different markets are always going to want to hear about what other people are doing. And I suppose particularly people are interested in what's happening in California. So there is quite a lot of kind of cross-fertilization of ideas.
In terms of becoming successful in other locations, do you work with partners on the ground? Because you and Dave, and I guess the team that was here, can't be flying off all over the place because you're going to be stretched. So have you built teams on the ground? Talk to me about that.
We're all UK based. What we do have now are local programming committees who are specific to a location, who help us with the content. Right. But we're also a fully remote team in the UK. So everything we do is done. We meet once a month as a team, and that's probably a kind of interesting separate conversation. But we are a hybrid remote team, and so we've always been able to do business by video link and emails, and so that's how we've always organized all of our conferences without too much problem, really.
I actually want to go on and talk about teams, because you say on your LinkedIn profile that your particular interests are human beings and teams, which I haven't seen before. It's interesting, both in your business and in the wider tech industry. Why is that? Is that an interest you've always had? Where does that come from? And sort of explain that a bit more, please.
I think it's my personal makeup. I am interested in humans, and I will tend to go to the human angle when I'm thinking about anything. And I think that's just how I'm made. And what I've had to do is kind of bring up the other aspects of leadership around that to make sure I kind of bolster those other skills and interests. I'm really interested in how teams work, because for our industry, that's what makes the members of our community in their businesses successful. So having these highly functioning teams with kind of, happy, secure, well-managed people in them, that's what is allowing businesses to make marginal gains and ship better, faster software. So that's kind of what we sell. That is what we do. We help people. Part of what we do is around their teams. And then in my own business, I don't know, just on a very simple level, I care about the people in my business, and they are my team. So, yeah.
And you just said you work fully remote, right? Now, obviously, we did that during the pandemic. A good chunk of event organisers that I've spoken to have now gone back at least 3, if not 4 days in person.
We shut down our office at the point everyone shut down their office. And actually, quite early into the pandemic, we made a decision that we were going to stay remote. We say we're hybrid remote because we do come together as a whole team once a month for a team day, which I can talk a bit about. And also then kind of functional teams also tend to come together on another occasion, a second day of the month. So we're not fully remote, and we don't employ anybody who lives in a place that would mean they couldn't come to London twice a month, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a month if there are ad hoc meetings. So we've got a UK workforce, but not more remote than that. But yeah, so a few months into the pandemic, maybe around November time, our lease came up on our office, and we went, well, let's just be remote forever, because we'd also started hiring a couple of people who weren't based in London. Dave, my business partner, decided to move out of London. And we said lots and lots of the companies that we serve in the tech industry have been remote for years and years and years and making it work. There's loads of good practice out there. We know it's hard. We know you have to be really intentional about building culture and teams in a remote environment. We know it won't be easy, but we made that call. And then as people started coming back into offices, we talked about it again, and we said, no, we've kind of made this commitment to our teams. We've got people who work for us in Nottingham and Leeds, and they can't come into the office 3 days a week. And we think we can make it work. We definitely did a really hard thing in the pandemic, all remote. So we proved it's possible. So we've stuck to it. And I don't say it's easy. I think that you do miss things about being in person. And it's a really live conversation in our business. We talk about it a lot. And actually we met as a whole team a week ago, and one of the things that we were talking about, we were having a little workshop on the ways in which we use internal communications and how we can make them more effective. I was in a little group talking about in person, and people from all functional areas of the business and different levels of seniority, and everybody was kind of saying pros and cons, aren't there? You know, there are some conversations that are just so much better and more productively had in person, but then it's really great for people's lifestyle. And if you've got a team that can manage their lives with their work, they're ultimately going to be happier in their jobs, and you're going to be better able to retain them if they know that they can get their kids to school on time or get to their yoga class bang on 5 o'clock. So yeah, I think there are trade-offs, and I think that I would definitely not claim to have worked out the perfect model for a highly functioning remote working environment. We've still got loads of work to do, but I think, we've committed to it. We won't be going back to having an office like that.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess, look, it's about everyone having clarity of both vision for the business, what's required of them in what timescales, and having an effective way of monitoring. And I mean that in inverted commas rather than micromanaging. So actually, everyone understands, what they need to do. Ruth, how would you define great leadership?
Oh Lord. I would like to say for any of my team watching this that I don't consider myself to be a great leader, but a diligent one, definitely. I care about leadership. How would I define a great leader? I think great leaders are really good communicators. I think that you need to be able to communicate your vision really, really well and keep doing that. And it almost has to be kind of reflex to do that. I think that great leaders are authentic and don't ask people to do things that aren't authentic to them. So I think that that's important too. And then I think that there are just loads of different kinds of great leaders. So some leaders are really brilliant because they're kind of instinctive and they make really quick leaps of understanding. They make quick decisions and it's the right decision and people are inspired by them and they follow them. Dave, who I work with, that's the kind of leader that he is. I'm not like that. I really admire that in him. I think that's kind of the greatness in the way that he leads. I think other leaders are great because they understand the value of the people that they're working with, and they work to support those people and make sure that those teams are kind of run in the way that they ought to be run. So in the industry that we work with, in the community we work with, I know a lot of leaders like that. I think I don't know if I claim that for myself, but that's certainly the kind of leadership that I would aspire to.
Sure.
So I just think there's loads of shades of leadership,
Sure.
but great leaders are authentic, and I think you do have to be empathetic. I think even the sort of the leaders who are kind of decisive and making these intuitive leaps, they've still got to understand people and be empathetic. I don't think great leaders are the people who are, shouting at them.
Autocrats.
I never wanted to work for people like that, and I wouldn't now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think most would agree with you. Ruth, what's the biggest challenge that you've faced on your journey as a business owner, and how did you sort of seek to overcome it?
The pandemic was a really big challenge because pre-pandemic we were a pure play in-person events business, and so the one way that we made revenue and served our community and supported our sponsors was through running in-person events, which obviously we couldn't do. And so it wasn't quite overnight. We had, sort of 3 months of kind of slowly realizing that this was not going to be possible. And eventually we were starting to postpone and then cancel conferences. And so we had a period of thinking, well, what on earth do? We can't run conferences. And we decided to go back to our community and to our market and just have lots and lots and lots of conversations. We had some really good advice. You mentioned peers from Collingwood earlier. We worked with Collingwood. We had really good advice from Collingwood when we were kind of panicking a little bit at the beginning. And they said, well, look, the need hasn't gone away. It's just that you can't serve it in the same way. So go back to that. So we had weeks and weeks and weeks of calls with our community, just talking to them about what was changing for them. And it was true, the need hadn't gone away. And actually, in lots of cases, it was more acute because for lots of those businesses, they'd suddenly gone to remote and they were running these very complex teams completely remotely all of a sudden. And so the problems that they'd had were even harder to deal with. And so having done that, we put everything that we knew back into a pot and said, well, what's our best way of meeting this need? And we decided it wasn't through kind of digital replicas of our current conferences, because we felt like a lot of what people get out of coming to conferences is about in-person interaction. And we didn't feel like we could replicate that. But we did do two things. So we built a kind of a virtual course or a learning product that was built for teams to attend together. And so we did a lot of thinking about how you get teams on the same page and how you help them to learn the same things together and then get to a point where they can go back into work on a Monday and make changes based on what they've learned. So we built a virtual course. And then we also launched LeadDev.com, which was our content platform, which is something that we had always wanted to do, but we hadn't had the time or the resource to do it. So we'd always known that coming to a couple of conferences a year, or actually one conference a year, doesn't service your needs for that whole year. You don't know what you're going to not know in another 8 months. So we would always wanted to be able to make free content available.
I mean, obviously during the pandemic and possibly outside of it, I'm sure there are moments, Ruth, where you experience self-doubt, even though you've got a business partner to sort of bounce ideas off. What happens to all of us in both our personal and professional lives. How do you sort of cope with those moments?
I think it's quite healthy to have a bit of self-doubt. I think good people don't assume they're always right. So that's okay. But you don't want it to be crippling. So yeah, having a business partner that you can speak to and share with is really helpful. And Dave has always been like a real cheerleader for me, which I'm really grateful for, because I think at different points you need that. I've had a coach at different points, an executive coach, and lots of different kinds of coaches. So there are coaches who are like therapists. There are coaches who are very kind of business specific and everything in between. But I think having a person that you can just talk to about the dilemmas that you're having is really helpful. And as I said, we've worked with Collingwood as consultants for a few years, and we've had Julian from Collingwood on our board acting as an advisor for a number of years. And I think having people external to your business is really helpful. And then there are also, a number of kind of trusted advisors in our community who I will go and talk to about things where decisions feel more to do with the right decision around a product or where the industry is going. So for me, self-doubt, can't solve it all internally. Actually, I just need to go and talk to different people about it.
I mean, you juggle, I speak to lots of founders, men and women, got partners, they've got family life, and obviously the business can be all consuming, right? How have you gone about, even if it's possible, establishing that balance? And there's lots to talk about work-life balance if you're in work, but if you're an owner in business, it's even harder. So again, someone listening, how have you
really hard. It is really hard. And there have definitely been points, like during the pandemic, just working absolutely silly hours after the kids have gone to bed, not getting anywhere near enough sleep for a human to function on. But, I think it is part of the founder's journey that there are going to be periods like that. I just don't know how it could be avoided, really. But a bit like the way me and Dave set out some boundaries around the importance of our friendship at the beginning of our working relationship, I did the same about family life and said, this is without question the thing that is the most important to me. And I continually do this thing to myself of, when I look back on this moment in 6 months and 6 years, what will be the right way to spend my time. And so if compromises have to be made, I have to say I generally make them at work rather than at home, because I think I'll never have this time again with my 5-year-old. So I work a 4-day week, and actually so does my partner. So ever since I've had kids, I've now got a nearly 7-year-old and a nearly 5-year-old. I've had a day a week at home with one or two of them, and I pick them up from school. Not every day, because I can't. There's not enough hours in the week if I do it every day. But I do very, very consciously prioritize family. And that was one of the things that was important to me in setting up the business, was making a space where family responsibilities and caring responsibilities would be acknowledged, and people would be able to have the flexibility to build the kind of lives that they needed at home. Because I think work is really important, and it's really important for paying a mortgage and self-esteem and, feeling interested in the world, but it is not the most important thing. And I think family and friends and your health, they are more important. And so again, definitely not a perfect record of prioritizing family or making a space where other people's work-life balance was in the right balance. But I think I do continually remind myself that that is the correct order of priorities. So ultimately, we have to come back to, if it's a period where the team are very, very busy and working very intensively, I don't want that to continue. I have to pull that back for them, or I have to pull that back for myself.
If you had the opportunity to speak to yourself when you first set up the business, so you could phone Ruth 10 years ago, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself at that time, given knowing what you know now?
Apart from go and do an MBA, Ruth? No. I would say I think I would have liked to have learnt the lesson about talking closely to your community and your market all the time, and understanding the right questions to ask when you're doing market research, so that you get to the right answers. You don't get to misleading answers where people are carried away by your enthusiasm for things, or kind of agree that something would be fun or interesting. I think that there's an art and a science to getting the right information when you're making product decisions, and still learning that. Definitely have learned a lot about it in the last 5 years. It would have been good to know 10 years ago.
And finally, Ruth, what do you love about working in conferences and events?
It's still that same customer service buzz for me, which is a bit prosaic, but I just really love it. I love delivering something that people benefit from in some way, whether it's the community who are coming and making connections or learning something that they didn't know before, or feeling like they have a new piece of information to solve something that was worrying them, or whether it's increasingly, whether it's the vendors who have their own set of issues to solve, and you can put them in touch with the right people. And we have really great relationships with our vendors too. And I really love the way our team kind of hums and delivers something together. You really kind of come together when you're delivering a conference and support each other in a particular kind of way. It's a really exciting feeling to work on a conference and deliver it together. So yeah, I love all that.
Agree with that. Ruth, thank you so much for your time. It's really fascinating to get an insight into the journey, and I'm sure there are more twists and turns to come in the future. And we wish you the very best of luck. Wish your team and the business partner best of luck, and we look forward to seeing more exciting announcements from LeadDev.
Thank you. That's very kind. I've enjoyed it.